G'day. Today is August 4th, 2021. You're watching The Pipeline on the Western Standard. I'm Western Standard publisher Derek Fildebrandt. Joining me today is Dave Naylor, news editor of the Western Standard. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing well, Derek. Welcome back from holiday.
It feels good.
I'm kind of still waiting for my gift.
I got nothing. I caught a lot of fish, but I don't think WestJet lets me bring that.
Packing on that on WestJet.
No. Cory, you're still alive?
I am.
I heard the pipeline was actually even better while I was gone.
That depends on who was listening. Some people might not have enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it.
Honestly, I didn't get to watch it. I was sitting on a boat somewhere fishing. Surely I would never drink beer while fishing. That's illegal. That's illegal. You're not allowed to do. You don't do that.
No.
So I would never do that. Well, we've got an interesting show for you. First show in August. We're going to be discussing Ottawa's rejection of the Alberta government's proposal to allow pepper spray as a regulated and legal tool for self-defense. Speaking of self-defense, we're going to discuss a case where an intruder near Red Deer has been shot dead. We're going to get into that case. We've also, as usual, we're going to be discussing the mandatory mask types, these anti-social gatherings that have been taking place across Alberta and I believe other parts in the West. People who just can't let go of the good times. We're all locked down and things were just so terrible. They want to go back to the good old days. We're going to be talking about them as well. We're going to be talking about the CBC losing more money as usual, advertising revenues down again. CBC needs a bailout again. And that's in addition to the annual bailout that they get every single year of well north of $1 billion. CBC just needs more money. Maybe they should have a telethon like they have for PBS in the States. I'm just not sure anyone would watch to be able to donate the money.
Yeah, nobody cares.
Okay, well, before we get started, today's show is sponsored by the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights. The Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights is working hard to defend your right to own and use firearms in Canada, defending your, well, it might not be in the Charter, but it's an ancient right to own firearms, to have your property protected. They're working in the courts, they're working in advocacy and lobbying to protect your rights to do such. Go to firearmrights.ca and click Why Join to learn more about why you should become a member of the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights. I am actually visiting some family of mine out east. I saw bumper stickers on a bunch of my family's trucks. They're all members of the CCFR. It was great. They're doing great work from one end of Canada to the other, not just in the West. They're fighting for your right to bear arms. So check them out, firearmrights.ca. Click Why Join to learn more. As well, today's show is also sponsored by Resistance Coffee. Resistance Coffee is a kick-ass blend to start your day with. Cory's favorite brand, what is it again?
It's definitely the Liberal Tears. That gets me going for the day and ready to take on Liberals.
It's a bitter truth.
Yes.
Yeah. They've got some great coffee blends for you. They take 10% of the proceeds of the sales of their coffee, and they use it to support great causes defending your constitutional freedoms. I know that's the kind of coffee I like to drink. So check it out. Go to resistancecoffee.ca and use promotion code Western Standard to get 10% off your first order. Again, that's resistancecoffee.ca and use promotion code Western Standard, all one word. Get 10% off your first order of Liberal Tears. Okay, well, let's get into the meat of the show today.
Got to thank our members first.
Oh, God. See, we've actually got a different setup here. I'm actually not working with, there is kind of a screen over here, but I'm actually not doing anything.
So you're still in holiday mode.
I'm a little bit. But we're also in a brand new, you guys can't tell, but we're actually in a brand new studio here. Big shout out to our Director of Operations, James Finkbeiner, who's done incredible work. Hopefully you guys can tell. Hopefully it's improved audio. I can't tell. We can just hear ourselves right now. But hugely improved video, hugely improved audio, nice professional studio that we've built here. So big shout out to our Director of Operations, James. But yeah, the reason we can do this is because our members have been so great. Our membership has continued to grow at a very steady pace. So we want to thank all of our members who have allowed us to afford something like this studio that we're working with today. If you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, go to westernstandardonline.com and click membership. You can try it free for 15 days. 15 days, you can get total unlimited access to everything on the Western Standard, bailout-free media. And if you like it, continue going. If not, cancel it and enjoy bailing out the CBC. All right, well, so now we're going to get to the right part of the show here. We'll begin with pepper spray. The Alberta government has proposed that the Criminal Code of Canada be amended so that people can use it as a tool of self-defense. Dave, tell us what Ottawa said.
Hey, gave us a big fat no there. Sort of second slap in the face in less than a week from our Ottawa brethren. This was a response to a letter that Casey Madhu, Alberta's Justice Minister, had sent to his federal counterparts, noting an increase in hate crime attack, especially against marginalized women, and basically said, let Albertans have another tool in their toolkit to...
a tool. There is pretty much no tool.
Yeah, that's true. In their toolkit to protect themselves. He noted the increase in, seems to be drug-fueled crime. He also blasted the government and said they should bring in a mandatory minimum for hate crime offenders if you're convicted of it. Mandatory minimum that you have to go away for. And Ottawa said no to both. The rejection came from Federal Safety Minister Bill Blair, and we all feel much safer with Bill Blair in charge of things.
Well, he's banned anti-tank weapons.
Yes.
We're much safer because the Panzerfaust is now outlawed. And
I thought my neighbor might be getting one for Christmas, but...
it was on my list, and no Panzerfaust in my stocking.
So Minister Blair says no. And he said also no to the mandatory minimum, saying those jail terms in the past have led to an increase in the Indigenous jail population and other skewed crime rates. So a week after ignoring Alberta in their Senate election, they're also ignoring his own pepper spray.
Well, Jean Chrétien said, pepper spray, I put it on my steak. Jean Chrétien was a big fan of pepper spray. That was for protesters, less so for self-defense. In Canada, there is essentially no sanctioned tool for you to carry around for self-defense. You can carry a knife, I guess, but that's a lethal weapon, obviously. If someone attacks you and you use a knife, chances are they're not the one going to jail. Cory, I think I know where you're at. That yes, I'm guessing you think it's okay to carry pepper spray.
It's a step in the right direction.
Step in the right direction. But do you think that this was? The cynical part of me says the province never thought for a second that Ottawa was going to do this. This was maybe just a way of kind of getting some good press with the base, try to gin up a little controversy with Ottawa on something they couldn't lose?
I think, it was a shot in the dark. Maybe you'd get it, but realistically, we know. If you want to make something not come into policy from Ottawa, have Alberta support it. Madhu's no fool, but it was worth a try. It highlighted, I guess there have been some bizarre assaults on minorities in Edmonton, and they feel vulnerable. As we've reported on a lot here, though, our public transit system in our downtown is getting outright dystopian, and there's a lot of aggressive people down there. I think people are asking for this. But no, I don't think Madhu really thought he was going to get it.
Pamela asked, does Bill Blair have taxpayer-paid security? Absolutely he does. When I was in politics, I received, definitely more than my fair share of threats, some of which were lethal. It never occurred to me that I would want security guards. I applied to the RCMP for a permit to carry my own handgun. No. So even a public official receiving death threats who's trained in the use of firearms is still not allowed to have it. So if I wanted security, I would have had to, at the cost of probably several $100,000 a year, have someone follow me around. That's a more appropriate use. I would really like to live in a country where leaders just defend themselves, where You can imagine like
Well, the Shawinigan handshake with Chrétien and getting back to him again. That was one of the few times I respected him. He
Yeah.
grabbed that guy by the throat and shoved him out of the way. You know what? You don't come aggressively approaching a political leader. He didn't wait for the RCMP.
yeah, he dealt with him. Now, what I didn't like about that was that if virtually anyone else besides the Prime Minister had given him that shake,
Well,
they probably would have been charged. I mean, that's generally what happens in Canada. If you defend yourself, there's a high likeliness that you're going to get charged yourself.
well, and it's the responsible use. Like some of the hyperbole when this discussion came up, though, I was glad it came up. I'm glad Maddie brought it up. So there's going to be people pepper spraying each other everywhere, and it's going to be clouds. Like, look, it'll still be illegal to go out and just walk up and pepper spray somebody. That is
Yeah.
an assault with a weapon. If you're not in a defense situation, you're going to get in a great deal of trouble misusing that pepper spray. Most people don't want to do that with it. They aren't going to do that with it. But it's this assumption that it's just going to be a mad free-for-all of pepper spray. Come on, you guys.
Well, I mean, if it's legal and people are carrying it around in their purses and their pockets, it might get used. There might be cases where it's used too liberally. This is actually a problem we have with police officers because they carry non-lethal weapons now. They carry police often carry pepper spray. They carry tasers. You remember, just roughly 7 or so months ago, 2 Calgary Police Service officers. They couldn't take down this gangly little kid who was playing hockey. Great crime of playing hockey during COVID. And one of the officers says, I'll fucking tase you. And she pulls her taser because the guy was playing hockey. It didn't comply with getting arrested by the police for playing hockey. So non-lethal weapons, because they're non-lethal, I think, do lend themselves to being maybe used a little too liberally at times. Which is to say, if we're not going to legalize pepper spray because it can be used too liberally, then that means we need to legalize firearms to carry around. We need open carry. We need closed carry.
And contrary again to what people think and say, I mean, I spent a lot of time working and hanging out in Texas. Love it down there. It's open carry down there. The Americans, I mean, they have a gun culture. They have more shootings. There's issues to deal with. But these shootings aren't happening with the legal firearm owners walking around like
No.
that. There isn't a free-for-all. They aren't, you stepped up shooting, I'll blow your head off. It doesn't.
How many people are getting shot in Montana where people could walk around with a big revolver on their belt like a cowboy?
And it comes
Nobody.
to responsibility and rights. I mean, it's as fickle and shallow as the old, you can't yell fire in a theater. Sure you can. There just better be a fire. You've abused your free speech if you're making a false claim of fire, and then there's a problem. But in the meantime, we trust people to use their speech right. And this just constantly wiping out all rights for fear of the abuse of it is bad and ridiculous, and that's where we're heading.
A lot of my female friends, they don't care what anybody says. They're carrying it, and it's in their purse.
Yeah.
And not one of them has told me a story yet where they've even actually had to pull it out and threaten to use it. But they sure as hell feel safer having it on their person in case they need it. And bottom line is women will do that. Doesn't matter what the government says.
Well, I'll leave it with this. Real feminists shoot back. So, let's, on the topic of self-defense, there was a story, I'm not sure if you had it very first, but definitely early out of the gate, Dave, shooting, I don't believe it was in Red Deer, I think it was outside of Red Deer?
Yeah, just outside Red Deer, middle of the afternoon, holiday Monday afternoon, a homeowner reported a break and enter in progress. It turned out, the RCMP later revealed that he was actually in a struggle with the bad guy, and the bad guy ended up being shot to death, and the homeowner ended up being taken to hospital. RCMP are being their usual tight-lipped self about this. We don't know much about either of the parties involved. We were able to find out, and it may not be related at all. The same place was the scene of a grow-up bust back in 2020 when marijuana was illegal.
Oh, this property was?
This property, yeah. They found a couple $100,000 worth of pot plants. Again, it may be absolutely nothing to do with it, maybe previous owners, but for some reason, somebody decided to break into this place in the middle of the afternoon and paid with it with his life. Question now goes to, will the homeowner be charged? And if you look at all the previous cases, the Maurice family down in Okotoks, which we've covered extensively, it's likely that they will. And the next question is there a jury in the world that, or a jury in Canada that will convict them?
You know, we don't know much about this yet. It's pretty murky. I think we knew pretty much right away with, say, the Eddie Maurice case, that these were thugs who broke onto his property, had no reason being there, and he had every right to defend his property with force and defend his family with force. We don't know much about this case yet. We know that it was an invasion and that the invader was shot. And even if you do believe in the right to self-defense, even if you believe in castle doctrine, you don't have a right to just shoot anybody who comes onto your property, even hostile. Like there is limits around this stuff. I mean, just
Sure.
you know.
The RCMP have said they were involved in a fight.
Yeah.
There was a physical altercation between homeowner and break-and-enter guy.
Yeah.
What it was, don't know.
Yeah.
But the homeowner ended up in hospital.
So I think we're going to have to. I think we're going to have to get a bit more information about this case.
We could talk about, though, the broader issue of your ability and right to defend your property. You know, those questions if he gets charged and goes. I mean, it's interesting there was a grow up. I mean, is this somebody who has some criminal difficulties or involvement with other things? That does change the dynamic of what's been going on. If this was a turf battle, we just don't know. But that principle, as you were saying, though, when it goes to jury, as with the Stanley case, I mean, if this was an unrelated, you know, just a burglar trying to come in and he was beating this man and you know, as it appears by on the surface, and he feared for his life, a jury will let him go. But he might have to run the gauntlet for a year and a half of misery before
That's the problem. Is you know, those kind of cases, at least, you normally get off in the end, but it's going to bankrupt you and it's going to destroy your life in the meantime, going through the court process and making lawyers rich. If this was a case, again, we don't know, but I mean, the property was involved in a crime before, grow up. I mean, if it's kind of a criminal on criminal, then who knows? There may have been some beef there. Maybe it wasn't pure self-defense.
There could be some details.
Yeah, we're going to need a bit more to come out about this one. But obviously, anytime we have these shootings in self-defense on a property, it catches our attention because we've seen this story before, and it's all too often the victim that's made the criminal.
Well, and we know that the jury will exercise common sense when it comes to it in the long run. I mean, that's why Maurice eventually got acquitted. They knew that we're just not going to make a case of this. We're wasting our time and his.
Yeah.
You know, let's change this so the benefit of the doubt is on the homeowner. I mean, you know, the presumption is that this person was defending himself until we find evidence otherwise, because it's backwards right now.
I think one of the big difference in this case is that from the Maurice cases, that was middle of the night, and they were skulking around in the middle of the night.
He had a child in the house.
Yeah, a child, and this was broad daylight, Monday afternoon, holiday Monday afternoon.
It's not a usual break and enter
It's not a
time.
usual break and enter time. Let's wait for the details, and then you know, we'll get the full story hopefully.
Okay. Well, we're going to move on to our next topic, which, oh yes, anti-social gathering, social gatherings. So, you know, you remember when we'd have, there'd be protests in downtown Calgary, downtown Edmonton, Vancouver, Regina, Winnipeg, around people protesting against lockdowns and violations of their liberties. You know, you'd have one person in the crowd with a crazy sign, and the media focus right in on them. You know, it definitely annoyed us because it's a cause I think we sympathize with very strongly. But you know, the legacy media would focus on the one guy with a crazy sign, and they'd say, "Oh, it's a small protest, and look at these guys, they're nuts." Well, now we're getting the other side of the coin here. We're getting the lockdowners, the people who want to send us back to good old days where we just sit around getting fat and collect government checks all day. People who want to lock us down. People, to be fair, I guess there's a spectrum of people who just want. They're saying it's tracing, but these are the people who opposed opening up entirely. So they're protesting against social gatherings, but having a fairly nice social gathering doing that in the meantime. Cory, you were there at least for the Calgary one. Why don't you tell us what it was about?
Yeah, I went down and I'd seen again, and I expand on this in my show, which we recorded today, which will be coming up pretty soon with the Cory Morgan show. Dr. Vipond, who's been a very visible person in the media, he comes forward, he's an emergency doctor in Calgary, had been tweeting, with the big socialist raised fist and saying it's time for a general strike, we have to push back. He demanded the resignation of Hinshaw, resignation of Kenny, resignation of Shandro, demanded an election, said we're going to bring Alberta to its knees, and said we're going to start a general strike, and we're going to have mass protests down there every day until we get our way.
Mass protest.
Mass protests. So I went down to the first day, and yes, it was something. Maybe, again, as I said, if I'm going to be generous, there were 80 protesters. There were at least 30 mainstream media members, though. The cameras, and I took a lot of pictures. I put them out there again. You'll see them on my show. This was a staged political theater. You know, Vipond was wearing his surgical scrubs. I mean, you didn't come from the hospital to the park downtown, doctor. You know, where was your stethoscope, right? You know, how far is this going to go? But it was ridiculous. These are people demanding. I mean, as somebody tweeted, you know, said they should be chanting, "Lock me up, lock me up." I mean, you guys you're demanding that your rights be infringed upon, and meanwhile, it's purely political. I mean, this is a politically involved individual. The people I saw there, they were holding, obviously they just grabbed on short notice what they could, so mostly it was education signs, but they were typical, I guess, your union stock signs that you might have around. And I guess they've been doing it.
The signs that really make sense. It was just
Well,
all these
teacher signs.
Yeah, these cutout ones from the unions. They're like, oh, I guess we didn't make our own signs for this one. We're going to have to get the protests for the curriculum signs.
Yeah, so I we'll see if this blossoms. I mean, there was a few more people on the weekend, it sounds like, but it's the weekend, you know, more people had time to pop out, but it doesn't seem to be snowballing into this tremendous general strike that's going to bring Premier Kenney to his knees yet anytime soon. But they are being portrayed, and what did frustrate and annoy me, and I certainly took my swipes, was the mainstream media. I mean, he set up in a low spot. You had all the cameras down there, and you had your handful of people around the outside. So it looked, if you're sitting low, as if you're in the middle of a crowd. That's why I was back 100 feet taking pictures. No, there's 60 people here, guys. Don't believe what you see on CBC.
Speaking of CBC, I got up this morning, heard their update, and their lead item was Alberta exploding in anger at Jason Kenney for bringing down the COVID requirement. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
What, 60, 80 people is not an entire province exploding in anger.
No, and it's not just the CBC. I listen to a radio show.
The mainstream media, they have to do something. They have to. This is the nugget they've chosen.
Yeah. And people are angry at Jason Kenney over COVID, and it's his former people who are still angry. I think people have maybe simmered down a bit since we're pretty much reopened here now. But the anger at the government is over beating up kids for playing hockey, for jailing pastors, for raiding and attacking churches, for thuggery, shutting down businesses. That's what people are upset about. Yes, you've got the regular social justice warriors and the union activists who couldn't be bothered to change their signs from the latest professional protests they went to who are upset. But I don't know anyone who is pulling their hair out who isn't a professional protester for this. People are happy to be back to some sense of normality.
And that's what I wanted to see down there, or not necessarily wanted to see, but you know, if I was going to read something into it, if you saw the common person, the person who doesn't show up for these, it's not the usual suspects. You know, you saw some folks coming down. I'm certain there are some people concerned. I mean, they've been fed fear and doom for 18 months, and that they are worried that we're opening too early, and they're concerned. But they're not concerned to the point of the uproar and marching in the streets that this group wanted to have down there. But again, the media, and as I said on the radio, I heard that in the news report, despite protests across the province, Kenney is still going ahead. Well, these are nothing, guys. I mean, an LRT train holds more people than that protest held.
Were there lizard people? What about the lizard people?
I didn't see any lizard people, but you know, if you get close enough.
All right. Well, speaking of CBC, not in their headlines is their latest demand for another bailout. The CBC gets, I don't know, what is it? It's about $1.4 billion a year.
1.2.
1.2. Okay, $1.2 billion a year. It's an annual automatic bailout every single year. The CBC's never made a profit a single year in its existence that I'm aware of. But the times are tough. Hard times at the CBC. Dave, why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, they reported an 18% drop in ad revenue over the last year, which many of the mainstream media is also reporting. And they're making their usual plea now. We're going to have to cut shows. We're going to have to cut services unless we get more money.
Less CBC.
And they say they might have overestimated a bit on their Olympic ad revenue. They predicted $400 million they were going to make off the Tokyo Olympics.
Sorry. Sorry. CBC projected they make $400 million
off the Olympics.
off a Summer Olympics.
The Summer Olympics.
In a lockdown Olympics.
Yes, because I guess everybody's locked down.
Jesus.
Nothing to do it. But
I'm going to put my dog in charge of CBC if I'm Prime Minister. Holy crap.
Well, you haven't heard the ratings yet. The ratings are in for the opening ceremonies. One of the big glamour events. 575,000 people, Canada watched the Olympics. Now, at the same time, over on CTV, you could watch MasterChef, and close to 1 million people tuned in to
That's a
MasterChef.
good way to show exactly how that.
So they may have overstated the money that they were going to make, but CBC President Catherine Tate says, all is not lost. Give us more money, and we will be that beacon of light. So there you go.
Cory, devastating news, obviously. What do you think would happen if the CBC had to cut its services?
I don't. Nobody would notice and nobody would care. They stink. Let's just not beat around the bush. Their viewership sucks. And if they have, advertisers follow viewers. If they could prove a large number of people watching, whether the advertiser agrees with CBC and socialized radio or not, they'll buy ad space. But nobody's watching. Their news is garbage. Their shows are not drawing people. Every media outlet's hurting. But what's frustrating is every other media outlet has to deal with it. The CBC just gets bailed out and bailed out. I'd say the advertising dollars they do get, in my view, are stolen from the private market. All the other media outlets that are trying for a finite advertising pool are out there. They can get undercut by an institution that's subsidized $1.2 billion a year, and biting into those advertising dollars that could be actually spread around to mainstream media outlets or even smaller media outlets that people actually watch. But they don't fear ratings, and it's showing.
Who is buying ads, was announced this week, is Unifor.
Oh,
The mainstream media's union.
Yeah.
They're buying anti-conservative attack ads on CBC.
well, they're preaching to the converted there.
Yeah, their audience is.
But I don't think they're buying. They're not buying just on the CBC.
No, just on
Oh.
CBC. They're going across the mainstream media.
They're spending a lot of money.
And I suppose we weren't planning on talking about that, but I think that's worth just getting into a little bit. Unifor. So Unifor is this big kind of catch-all union, and it represents a ton of so-called journalists in Canada. And this is an extremely partisan union. I think I could be mistaken. Correct me if I'm mistaken, and people in the comments can too. But is it part of the Canadian Labour Congress?
I believe a whole bunch of them merged together at one point.
But the Canadian Labour Congress is, so it might actually be one of these sub-unions of the NDP.
They're Canada's biggest private sector union.
Yeah. So if they're a part of the Canadian Labour Congress, they might then also be essentially one of the subsidiary parties of the NDP. So it's one of these weird things.
Just like Gil McGowan and the Alberta Federation of Labour is constitutionally entrenched within Notley's NDP. Like they pull an incredible amount of power in.
So
that
maybe
party.
Dave, make a note of this. Let's look into that. See if all the union media members who are part of Unifor, are they de facto effective members of the NDP because of their structure? Let's do a little look at this to see if Canada's media is officially partisan. They're already paid by the government. Well, let's see if they're party members too. Okay. Well, I think that's it for. I didn't miss anything, no?
I think we covered all we wanted.
I'm trying to get used to the new format. I'm not actually controlling a screen up here. We're. I feel like we're in the space shuttle here.
Good. Just don't forget the members again on the way out.
No, of course we're gonna. But first let's start with people who do advertise with real private sector media.
Exactly.
And
reaping the benefits, we hear.
I hear so. Yes. Today's show is sponsored by Resistance Coffee, kicking ass. Of course, they advertise not with the CBC. They're advertising with the Western Standard, sponsoring shows just like this. Check them out. Beautiful blended coffees supporting. They take 10% of the proceeds of their sales, and they use it to support causes and organizations that defend your constitutional freedoms in Canada. Go to resistancecoffee.ca and use promotion code Western Standard to get 10% off your first order. Again, resistancecoffee.ca and use Western Standard, one word, promotion code to get 10% off. Today's show is also supported by the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights, who is also not supporting an advertising on the CBC. The Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights is defending your right to own, use, and bear firearms safely and responsibly in Canada. Go to firearmrights.ca. I always get that mixed up. It's a
tough one.
It's a tough one. Go to firearmrights.ca and click on Why Join to learn more about why you should become a member of the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights. They are just a fantastic organization fighting for your right to own and use firearms in Canada. Not enough people who are doing that. A very important organization. Well, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Cory. And thank you, everyone watching, especially Western Standard members. If you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, go to westernstandardonline.com and click membership. You can try a Western Standard membership free for 15 days. See if you like it. It's bailout-free media. We're one of the few media organizations in Canada not bought and paid for by Justin Trudeau and the federal government. I can also assure you, no one here is a member of Unifor. The instant the Western Standard unionizes, I vow I will shut the doors. That's it for today. Thank you very much. God bless.